everybody. Welcome back. Today, I am really excited because I have one of the speakers that just gave a tremendous presentation to my Vistage group on conflict, how to deal with it. And Ken, I want to welcome you today and would love to go over some of those brilliant ideas you had for dealing with conflict.
Yeah, good to be here this morning. And it was fun to work with your group in this past month. And I also, had a chance to work with your group in November. So it felt like I was just there. But, I had a good time, good experience both times.
Well, it's not often that I invite a speaker back. They have to have hit it out of the ballpark, which you did. Congratulations. And you came back, you changed the topic, and it was another great present. Let's dive in. I recall a variety of things. You referenced a variety of books as reference, but one of the things that stuck out to me was the Thomas Kilmann conflict mode instrument. Can you talk a little bit about that and how that helps around conflict management?
Well, certainly everybody's going to have conflict, Scott. I don't care where you are, in our environment today, we've got a lot of volatility and uncertainty, and that's certainly going to create some challenges for almost all of us, whether we're leading, following, or what have you. And so the Thomas Kilmann conflict instrument, and they call it the TKI, is the most widely used instrument in the world that measures conflict. And what we worked with your group is we actually took a profile or a test right in the middle of the workshop, and it takes literally less than 5 minutes to complete it. And which is kind of interesting because, basically everybody's on the spot right there. And the fun thing is to go around the room and say, okay, where do you think you line up in one of the 5 different buckets that Kilmann put you in? And what do you think you are? And then once you take the test, where do you actually show up? And so there's a little bit of self-awareness there, around conflict, but the model is pretty simple. And it basically comes down to 5 different areas. So one is competing, the other is avoiding, third is accommodating, the fourth is compromising, and then the sweet spot is really what they call collaborating. And that's where you win and I win. And again, we will all default to one of these, but the self-awareness part is, okay, if you know you're going to default to, let's say, competition, how would you adjust your thinking, which in fact will adjust your behavior, towards getting towards collaboration. But it's a real simple, easy model. Whether you're a seasoned CEO or senior level leader, or just a brand new leader coming up, it's something that you can do with your own teams. And I find it just to be a lot of fun and very easily adaptable and accessible for everybody.
It was great to be right in that session and take a live assessment, right? Yeah. It was very interactive and much appreciated.
I think, a lot of people right now are the assessment out. A lot of speakers are doing assessment on virtually everything. And I do as well. Even in my own Vistage groups, we take as many assessments as we can, because I think it is really about self-awareness and how do we get better. But the instrument that we used in the room, real simple. And as I said, it took less than 5 minutes to complete it. So I think everybody enjoyed the brevity.
Yeah. And then you walked into a model based off the DISC profile, which I've taken several times and I use with my teams, but it's by Patrick, and I hope I get the last name right, Lencioni.
Yes.
And about the 5 dysfunctional behaviors. Maybe you can walk us through a little bit about that, please.
Well, Patrick Lencioni certainly is a household name for a lot of folks. That anybody in training would certainly know his name and his work. He's a writer and one of the best out there. And one of his books is called The 5 Dysfunctions of a Team. And what he's done, he's actually taken that writing and turned it into an assessment where he can come into a team and actually measure several different areas. And the platform basically starts with a foundation of trust, which is kind of interesting because I just did a big workshop on trust. And I think all of us, really, our currency is trust. And we're in the trust business. We really are. And so it starts with trust as foundation. Then it goes from there to conflict, which is interesting because here comes the Thomas Kilmann model, and that's why I introduced it. And Lencioni really says that, good teams have to have conflict, but it's not mean-spirited conflict. And he says that conflict is really just a pursuit of the truth, which I think is interesting. But it goes with, from a foundation of trust to conflict. And then when you have conflict, you have, commitment. And then from a commitment, you have accountability. And from accountability, you have results. So it's trust, conflict, commitment, accountability, and results. And you can actually take a profile on that if you would like to as well. A lot of companies will do a pre-test, see how are we doing in these 5 different areas. And then they might come back, 6 months later and do a post-test. So what changes have we been able to make, in those areas? And that's a lot of fun when you can see the progress, that your organization is making. But really, it's just a lot of material. And Lencioni is very, very giving with a lot of his information. If you go online, as I communicated to your group, there's probably 30 to 40, free videos that Lencioni has produced, literally going through, all 5 of the 5 dysfunctions. And so for anybody that's creative, you can go through and just almost create your own course and say, all right, look, let's go build this foundation of, this 5 behaviors of high performing teams would be the reverse of the 5 behaviors of 5 dysfunctional teams.
Mm-hmm.
So I like it. I use it a lot. I've used it for 20 years. I find it to be very, very effective.
Very good. Then you talked about Craig Weber and candor and curiosity and conversational capacity, finding the sweet spot. Can you touch on that for a few minutes?
I sure can. So it's ironic because Craig is actually coming into Dallas today and working with my groups the next 2 days, which is fantastic. He is one of only a couple of speakers that Vistage has been Speaker of the Year in the United States, in Canada, and in Australia. He's won all 3 of those. And he did it primarily on the work of his one book, which was really called Conversational Capacity. And it is just a wonderful book. And really the summary of that would be the sweet spot of conversation is where candor and curiosity meet. And so this goes right in line with what Lencioni's talking about as well. You got to get to the middle point of this. He calls it the fulcrum. But so Lencioni's got his books, and so Craig's got 2 books. The first book was Conversational Capacity, which is highly acclaimed, and then you've got Influence and Action, which was the book that came after Conversational Capacity, and it really just takes that whole concept of the sweet spot of conversation being candor and curiosity and takes it to a different level. But Mr. Weber is just fantastic, and I'm really fantastic. I'm excited that he's coming in the next couple of days because I get a chance to hang out with him. But when I speak, Scott, you and I have spoken about this, but I always ask almost all the audience I speak to is, okay, if you were to list the top 10 books that have shaped you, what would they be? What would you add to that list? It's really interesting to see what topics and books people pick to put on that list. And for me, the book Conversational Capacity certainly is right there. I think that the skills that you can learn from his readings and his teachings are just simply fantastic. That will serve you well in any position or certainly as you go through life. So it's one of my top 10 books.
Great. So one of the things I'd like to do is maybe get very practical here for the next few minutes. Can you identify some problems with tough conversations and specific tricks, or if you will, strategy to work through them? And maybe if you could give an example, that would be great.
Well, I'll go back to my first starting when I started working with Vistage, and I've been with Vistage for 16 years, as a master chair and as a speaker. And I remember when I first started, I thought everybody would come to me for all the answers. And oh boy, what a misgiving that was, because now they come to me really for all the questions. And I often say, and I said this to your group on both occasions, was, look, please write this down. It's not your job to to answer the questions. It's your job to question the answers. And the tough part about that is if you're a mid-level leader where you have to manage up, down, and sideways, that is the toughest job right now because communication is not there a lot of times. The information is not readily available. Over 60% of employees say they don't know what's expected of them. So if you're a mid-level leader, you're grinding this thing. But they all got to those roles because they execute and get stuff done. And so as a result of that, the thought process is I have to have all the answers here. And really, because against really, I think what you learn as you get older is you got to stay there and you got to have the questions. And so for me, I think that's more mental than it is, a physical thing. You just got to be aware when you get a question asked to you is to acknowledge it and then redirect it. Good question, Scott. Let's see what the team has to say or what everybody else here. What would you do? How would you handle that? And so that certainly allows you to, get people to that sweet spot of conversation. Both of us are not spring chickens. We are, I don't know, what's the right word? Seasoned? I like to call it experienced, but we can certainly come up with a lot of different answers, but I think we serve our members better when we come up with the answer or with the questions, not necessarily the answers.
Yeah,
So
actually, I think that's one of the key components of the Vistage model.
Yeah.
Plus I think as you're describing this, having people come up with their own answers makes them accountable, makes them think. It makes them trust you because you're asking for their opinion. It's got multiple benefits along the way.
And no question about that. The tough part, again, as I said, if you're a mid-level leader, you got to those positions, you got those promotions because you execute and you're able to get results. And you think that the only way you do that is through the hard work and you answering the questions and doing the work. And I think there's a shift there. Eventually you say, hey, look, my job is to lead, and I'm going to have people run and grow. And so there's a shift, I think, that goes on there. And I think that, the book, Conversation Capacity, again, I find it to be an easy application. Basically, it's my view versus your view. What are you seeing? What am I seeing? And I always like to, kind of fool around with people. And I hold up my hand and I say, all right, what do you see? And I hold up, 4 fingers. And everybody says, well, 4 fingers. I'm like, well, I don't get that because I see the 3 spots in between the 4 fingers. And I say, well, let's do it again. And I do it from the other side. And, am I wrong or am I right? Well, we're both right. We're both seeing the same thing. We're just seeing it from a different perspective. And I'm a big Ted Lasso fan.
Yes.
And
oh my, so many great quotes.
Yeah, and I bring that into every meeting. I put a quote up, and I think he's got a good one. Don't fight back, fight forward. And he said, it's about being curious. So, yeah, a lot of I've often said that leaders are readers, and it's tough these days to read a lot because we're bombarded with so many different things. Where do you what do you read? AI is a good example right now. There's so much information coming at you from right field and left field about AI. When do you actually stop and actually take the time to read? But I would encourage everybody that might listen to this to go take a look at Craig Weber's work. It will have an influence and an impact on you.
Yeah, you made several suggestions on books that were follow-ups for a lot of the members. Let's switch gears a little bit. You talked about the difference between coaching, mentoring, and managing. Can you take a few minutes and highlight that and how that is involved in communication?
Yeah, and thanks for asking about this one. This is also another area that has been really impactful for me in the work that I do. And I really kind of got the initial concept from Irina Baronoff, who's a speaker for Vistage in Philadelphia. And she's a great chair, award-winning speaker and award-winning chair. And so she came in to my groups years ago and was just fantastic. And her style is very similar to Craig Weber, ironically. And she came up and she said, all right, let's talk. And she was able to talk about the difference between coaching and mentoring. And at the same time, I was going through some challenges with really my son at the time. And we were just not connecting. He just graduated from college. And I remember we were kind of getting to the last part. I wasn't going to work with him anymore. And even asked him a question. I said, what do you want out of today's conversation? You want me to coach you? You want me to mentor you? You want me to manage you? And he said, good question, Dad. And he said, I just need a little help today. Can you just help me manage this situation? And so it was the best conversation I've ever had with my son.
Mm.
And it was truly a game changer. And I remember that day very, very clearly because I went back to my wife and said, man, we had a great conversation. She said, well, ironically, your son said the same thing.
Mm.
So the next Sunday we had another call. And I said, what do you want out of today? And he says, I just need a little mentoring on this one, Dad. And so you can see kind of how it went. So I took that back to my own members and my own clients. And now I find myself before I'm in a one-on-one, I ask, all right, what would you like out of today's, conversation? You want me to coach you, mentor you, or manage you? And it really forces the people that you're working with to stop for a second and say, what do I really want out of this? And if you're trying to coach somebody and they want you to mentor them, it's malpractice, and it just will not work well. So this has really allowed me, and you've heard the term good to great. And I think this has allowed me to go from pretty good to really good at doing one-on-ones. And I think a lot of us say, well, I'm going to coach the person, I'm going to mentor the person. And we use those two words kind of simultaneously as if it's the same thing, and it's not. It is absolutely not. And, there's a number of different books that are out there, but just real quickly, the difference, and I'll define that. So coaching is where you guide discovery and insights for change and growth in the person. So you're helping guide that conversation. Mentoring is very different. Mentoring is where you're modeling behavior based on past experiences. For example, I've been the CEO of both public and private companies. And so if I'm mentoring somebody, in my staff, let's say a chief operating officer or, a sales manager, I've had those roles in the past. I can say, look, here's what's worked for me during my career in these situations. Take a look at this so you might benefit from it. So you're actually being able to exhibit, that behavior based on your past experiences. And then managing is a little different. Managing is where you're collaborating together to try to accomplish, something or problem solve. So it's really collaborative problem solving is the best way I can explain that. And that's different than coaching and mentoring. And so if you can delineate the three, Scott, I think that it becomes just a hell of a tool for any of us out there. And I blame it on Arena in a very, very, in a very, very good way, because she's the one that really created the platform for me to take it and put my own Stibler stuff on it, and it's been forged and shaped by the impact from Weber and many others out there that are doing the work that we do day in and day out. So
yes, like 3 years ago, she was part of the chair academy that I went through, and I found that she was brilliant during that session. So I'm not surprised to hear that you picked up something from her.
yeah.
And Ken, by the way, thank you so much for sharing the story about you and your son. People are so much more effective when they can get down to reality and go beyond just making quotes but talk about how it's applied. So hats off to you. Congratulations.
Thanks.
And frankly, again, kudos for getting my group excited to have you a second time and a new message. So Ken, how people want to get to know more about you, your speaking, your business, how do people get a hold of you?
Well, probably the easiest way would be my email address, and it's a ken@kenstibler.com, which is probably the easiest one. And my company is called Strategic Integration Services. And every week I put out a blog, and we've done that for going on almost 4 years now. And that's called Human Capital Intel, HCI, Human Capital Intel. And there's just some fabulous information. We aggregate 250 sources all around human capital and what's going on there. And that's certainly a moving target, for all of us. But we're in the people business, and I'm in the people business. And so we're fortunate to be able to use some wonderful tools. I work with my son on that. So he does a lot of the work behind the scenes. And so we put this out, every week. It's called Human Capital Intel, HCI. Please come check that out. It's a weekly roundup of key trends that affect businesses' most important area. That's the people area. And it aggregates and takes the most important trends and data and just really summarizes it for everybody. It's no cost, so feel free to come and take that journey. My cell phone number is 214-557-7400. I do a variety of different things. I'm a Vistage chair, I'm a Vistage speaker. I do keynotes. I've got a couple of big keynotes coming up here this month. I just got done doing a big keynote in August. Pretty excited about that. And yeah, I like speaking. I think I've got some really fun topics. Got about 15 or 16 different topics. You mentioned trust. I just did a big one on trust last week in New Mexico, which is kind of fun.
Very good. Well, Ken, thank you once again. Great session, great information. I encourage people to reach out, and I'm going to wish you all the best. And I'm sure I'm going to see you in one of the national Vistage events here soon.
Absolutely. Scott, thanks very much for your time as well and for asking me to be part of your podcast here. And if I can help you or any of your viewers, please feel free to reach out. Thank you.
All right. All the best.